Hey everyone, I'm really glad you're here tonight. Before we begin, there's nothing you need to do, nothing to follow, nothing to keep up with. You don't have to stay awake or even listen closely. This is a quiet journey, one you can drift in and out of, the way thoughts drift in half-dreams. Maybe you're already lying down, the lights are low, the air still. Or maybe you've just found a calm corner to rest your mind for a while. However you've arrived, you're welcome here. We're going to travel slowly together through the past, through nights that were darker, quieter, and somehow more alive than ours. Nothing loud, nothing fast, just the soft rhythm of stories and a bit of peace. If you'd like, tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Is it late where you are? Or is the sun only starting to set? And when you wake tomorrow, maybe share how far into the night you remember reaching. Your words might be the ones someone else falls asleep to. Alright, let's turn down the lights together and see what night once looked like before electricity. The light is leaving, not suddenly, not sharply, but the way a sigh fades from the air. The sky, moments ago alive with gold, now turns to the softest gray. The sun sinks behind a ridge of stone houses, or perhaps behind reeds at the edge of a river. It's the same in every age. This pause between worlds. Tools rest, voices quiet, even the wind seems to wait. Before electricity, the coming of night was never small. It was an event, the daily turning of the world from certainty to mystery. When light left, the familiar became shadows. The day's noise dissolved into listening. In ancient Mesopotamia, when the long shadow of a ziggurat stretched across the city, families gathered in courtyards still warm from the sun. They built small fires of reeds and dung. Blue smoke rose in twisting ribbons. Clay lamps filled with sesame oil flickered to life. Not bright, but steady, gold at the center and red at the rim. Children leaned against their mothers. Old men told stories of gods and rivers. Each spark of flame carved a tiny island of safety in the dark. Darkness wasn't a choice. It was the rule. And people met it without resistance as you meet sleep itself. Far to the west, in Egypt, sunset meant ceremony. As the sun god Ra descended into the underworld, priests in Thebes performed the ritual of the setting sun. They burned frankincense and myrrh. The scent mixed with sand and fading heat. Bronze lamps shaped like lotus flowers glimmered before statues. Outside, the desert turned violet. Inside, the gods kept their glow. Common homes mirrored the temples in miniature. A bowl of oil, a linen wick, a flame no higher than a finger. It was enough. The small light stood against infinity. In Athens, the sun slipped behind the Acropolis and the marble cooled from gold to lavender. Merchants folded tents. Bakers stoked their ovens for dawn's bread. The city entered its Hesperos, the hour of the evening star. Olive oil lamps lined thresholds. Their smoke carried the smell of olives and char. A flute played somewhere across the street. Its notes tangled with the first call of crickets. People spoke softly, as though words themselves might disturb the air. To walk outside now was to enter another world. Walls melted into outlines. Trees whispered instead of stood. The heavens opened in their full brightness, billions of stars crowding the black. The Milky Way cut the sky like spilled flour on dark stone. Every traveler knew it. Every child could name it. Silence filled the senses until even one's own breathing felt too loud. In Rome, night rearranged time itself. No clocks ticked, only the drip of a water clock counting hours by sound. Watchmen called the Vigilii, changing shifts by torchlight. Along the Via Sacra, the last taverns shuttered. Distant laughter faded into alleys. A mother on an upper floor checked the coals in her brazier. Her children slept under rough blankets. The lamp on the shelf burned low, the smell of hot oil sharp in the tiny room. Outside, the torches hissed in the wind. To the Romans, night was both friend and thief. A time for poets and lovers, for ghosts and for sleep. The dark pressed close, yet it carried comfort, a reminder of home, of enclosure, of being small but safe. Seneca wrote that the night was when the mind returned to itself. Stripped of spectacle, the soul could hear its own voice. Perhaps that's why philosophy, prayer, and dreaming all belong to darkness. A candle's hiss, the faint hum of insects, the rustle of straw. These were the sounds of civilization resting. The final person awake lowered the wick, covered the flame, and let the blackness swallow the room. Outside, stars took their turn to light the world. And for the first time each day, true night began thick, absolute, endless. It wasn't emptiness. It was belonging. A world of small fires and great silences, of warmth within and wonder above. Before electricity, people didn't chase the night away. They moved with it, trusting its rhythm, its mystery, its gentle pull towards sleep. The sun had fallen, but in its absence, humanity found the oldest comfort there is, the quiet beauty of being small beneath a living sky. Light. It was never as simple as a switch. It was work. It was art. It was survival. Before electricity, before even candles, light was something coaxed from the earth, born from oil, fat, and patience. The people of the ancient world didn't just use light. They tended it as one might tend a living thing. In ancient Greece, a household's lamp was small enough to fit in one hand. Terracotta, plain or gently curved, its surface was polished smooth from years of touch. You'd fill it with olive oil, thick, golden, faintly green in the firelight. A strip of linen or flax served as a wick, resting in a narrow spout at the edge. To light it, you used another flame, fire borrowed from fire, a spark from a hearth, or a taper already lit from the neighbor's lamp. And when that wick caught, the light didn't flare. It bloomed, soft, slow, warm like honey. The flame was small, perhaps enough to light a face or the open pages of a scroll. But that was enough. The rest of the room stayed in half-shadow, alive with movement. People didn't fight the darkness. They learned to see within it. Their eyes adjusted. Their homes were arranged so that one lamp could serve many tasks, near a table, beside the bed, or at the household shrine. If the flame wavered, someone's first instinct wasn't annoyance, but protection. They'd cup a hand around it, whisper something under their breath. Not a prayer exactly, but an act of care. In Rome, light had a hierarchy. The rich burned beeswax, clean, bright, sweet-smelling. The poor used tallow, animal fat that smoked and stung the eyes. A single good candle could cost a day's wage. So for most, night was not something to conquer, but to ration. Roman villas glowed with bronze lamps carved like dolphins or eagles, hung by chains from the ceiling. Their oil, pressed from imported olives, perfumed the air. A guest might admire the brightness, knowing that somewhere outside, 10 families shared a single smoky flame. In poorer homes, lamps were patched, cracked, blackened from years of soot. The smell was always there: burnt oil, dust, clay. Children coughed a little, then quieted. The mother stirred the flame with a pin to keep the wick from drowning. Light was precious enough that people spoke of it the way we speak of food. It was measured, shared, borrowed, saved. If a guest visited after dark, one of the household lamps would be relit, a sign of welcome, even if it meant burning through tomorrow's oil. Elsewhere, other fires lived their own lives. In Persia, in the temples of Zoroaster, sacred flames burned day and night, tended by priests who never let them die. Those fires weren't symbols. They were living presences, believed to connect heaven and earth. To approach one was to stand before the breath of creation. In India, oil lamps called diyas still burn the same way. A cotton wick, a clay bowl, ghee or sesame oil feeding the flame. Their soft yellow light turns darkness into gold. 1,000 points of stillness scattered across courtyards and shrines. Fire was more than light. It was safety. It was the beating heart of every night. When storms rolled through, people didn't pray for sunshine. They prayed for their fire not to go out. Because if it did, if the last ember died, it meant starting again from nothing. Imagine that. The deep frustration, the slow ritual of reigniting flame. No matches, no lighters, just friction, spark, dry grass, and time. To lose light was to lose warmth, cooking, protection. You'd send someone, a child usually, to the neighbor's house to borrow a glowing coal. They'd carry it carefully in a clay cup, running through dark alleys, shielding it from the wind with both hands. That's how communities stayed connected, through the sharing of light. For the ancients, flame had a soul. The Greeks called the sacred fire of the home Hestia. Her hearth was where meals were cooked, but also where oaths were made and travelers were welcomed. As long as the hearth burned, the household was alive. When cities were founded, they were given a flame from the mother city, carried carefully across sea or land, relit in the new settlement's heart. To them, the continuity of flame was the continuity of people. You can imagine it, night in an ancient courtyard, one small lamp burning, a family gathered close, shadows stretching along the walls. The mother adjusts the wick, the father mends a sandal. A child plays with the reflection on a pot, waving their hand to make the light dance. The air hums softly with insects, a distant dog barks. The world feels endless, yet safely contained within that circle of light. Before electricity, light didn't fill space, it defined it. Where it reached, there was home. Where it didn't, there was the unknown. But that boundary wasn't frightening. It was beautiful. It reminded people of scale, of how vast the night truly was, and how miraculous it was to hold even a fragment of light against it. In the great cities, Babylon, Alexandria, Rome, travelers described the sight of hundreds of lamps burning at once. Temples gleaming, taverns glowing, torches flaring at gates. From a distance, the city shimmered like a constellation fallen to earth. But up close, every flame sputtered, hissed, wavered with its own fragile will. That's what night looked like. 1,000 tiny lives trembling in the dark. By midnight, most of those lights were gone. Oil ran low. The final wicks curled inward, smoldering until only smoke remained. The smell of spent oil lingered like memory. Sharp, faintly sweet, impossible to wash away. The night returned to its full breath, swallowing the outlines of rooms, streets, and faces. Only a few distant fires still moved, watchmen's torches, sailors' lanterns, a temple's eternal flame. And those who watched them from afar didn't see weakness in the dark. They saw meaning, because light, when it's rare, feels like love. Something fragile, fleeting, endlessly worth protecting. Before electricity, every night was a balance between fear and awe. Every flame was an act of defiance, but also devotion. People didn't flip a switch. They bent close, breathed softly, and kept the flame alive with their own breath. And so the ancient world glowed. Not brightly, not endlessly, but with the quiet endurance of a heartbeat in the dark. The sun has vanished. The air has cooled. And Rome, the largest city the world has ever known, exhales. Daytime Rome is noise and movement. The clatter of carts, the roar of markets, the sharp voices of merchants selling figs, bread, and salt fish. But night transforms it. When the last traces of sunlight fade over the hills, the city doesn't fall silent immediately. It shifts, like a great creature rolling onto its side. The streets soften. The air smells of ashes, warm oil, and damp stone. And the sky, vast and unbroken, presses close above the rooftops. Torches flicker along the Via Sacra, the sacred road that winds through the Forum. Each one burns inside a small iron cage, fixed to a wooden post. The flame is unsteady, alive with its own restless mind. Shadows leap against marble columns and statues of the gods. Jupiter, Mars, and Venus glow faintly in orange light, as if watching their city rest. The crowd has thinned. The senators have gone home. The hawkers and beggars, too. Only the sound of sandals remains, slow, echoing, sometimes joined by the faint roll of a handcart. The city, once deafening, now hums like a sleeping animal. From somewhere near the Subura district, Rome's poorest and liveliest quarter, comes the faint rhythm of a tavern still awake. A low song, half laughter, half memory. Wine sloshing in clay cups. Someone knocks over a stool. Someone else hushes them. The scent of sour wine and smoke mixes with the odor of refuse and fish. You can almost feel the weight of it in the air, a smell both living and decaying. Taverns were the heartbeat of Rome after sunset. Sailors, slaves, bakers, and foreigners gathered to talk, eat, or simply escape the night. The light came from oil lamps hung on chains, their flames mirrored in the liquid of their cups. No music, no show, just voices, quiet, close, human. Outside, the alleys are narrow, barely wide enough for a cart. The walls of Insuli lean in toward each other as though whispering secrets. Wooden balconies creak overhead. Laundry left to dry in the afternoon now moves gently in the night air. A dog sniffs along the gutter. A cat slips silently across a roof beam. A pair of sandals, too quick, too careful, passes down the lane, avoiding the pools of torchlight. Rome has its watchers, but also its shadows. At every corner stands a small shrine, lararium, the household gods of crossroads and thresholds. Inside, a clay lamp burns beside tiny figurines. Travelers and neighbors alike nod to them in passing. Even thieves whisper small prayers to these guardians of the night. The Romans believed each street, each corner, had its own spirit, the Lares Compitales. They watched over those who lived there, those who slept, those who wandered. And in the silence between footsteps, you could almost hear the city breathing through them. Not far from the Forum, the vigiles begin their rounds, the night watchmen of Rome. Their duty, to keep order and to watch for fire. They walk in twos, torches in hand, bronze helmets catching the light. Theirs is not a proud job. It's hard, thankless work, but vital. The city has burned before. Everyone remembers the great fire under Nero, how entire districts vanished into ash. At each intersection, they pause. One pours water from a jug to wet the ground. The other listens for the crackle of fire or the cry of alarm. Then they move on, their torches swaying like stars walking the earth. Elsewhere, life continues quietly behind closed doors. In a wealthy domus, marble floors gleam by lamplight. Servants move silently, clearing away the remains of dinner. Roasted lamb, bread, wine diluted with water. A musician plays softly in the courtyard, his lyre plucking notes that barely reach the outer walls. The master of the house reclines on a couch, half asleep, the faint smell of perfume still on his skin. For the poor, the night is smaller. In the Insuli, entire families share one room. The heat of the day lingers in the walls. A mother fans her child with a piece of woven reed. A man stirs in his sleep, dreaming of cool air and open space. Between floors, you hear everything. Footsteps, coughs, whispers. In Rome, privacy is a luxury. Even dreams feel shared. By the river, the Tiber glimmers like dark glass. The bridges are almost empty now, except for a few fishermen checking their nets under dim lanterns. One coughs, another hums softly to himself. The water laps against the stone supports, slow and steady, the city's other heartbeat. A gust of wind ripples through the reeds, carrying the smell of mud and algae. A torch flares briefly, then settles. Even the flames seem to move slower here. Above all this, on Palatine Hill, the palaces of emperors stand in silence. From their terraces, servants look out at the city's faint constellation of fires. The emperor sleeps behind thick curtains, but the world beyond his walls still moves, quietly, endlessly. To look down from here is to see the truth of Rome at night. It is both magnificent and fragile. A world built of stone and shadow, of power and poverty, united under the same uncertain light. As the hours pass, the city grows darker. One by one, lamps are extinguished. Oil runs out. Wicks curl into smoke. The streets fall fully still. Only the watchmen remain, walking their rounds with slow patience. Their footsteps echo off the walls, soft, hollow, rhythmic. Occasionally, a voice calls out the hour. Prima vigilia. The first watch is done. A dog answers with a bark. Then, nothing. If you were to stand there now, in the heart of that silence, you would hear things modern ears cannot. The faint hiss of dying flames, the rustle of cloth as someone shifts in sleep, the heartbeat of the city beneath your feet, the slow creak of beams, the sigh of air through narrow lanes. The stars above Rome shine clearly, undimmed by smoke or light. They look down on a civilization that thinks itself eternal, unaware of how much of its life depends on small, trembling flames. And so the night holds Rome, not conquered, not threatened, just held. The city breathes, its people rest, its lights fade one by one, and in that vast, moonlit stillness, Rome feels exactly as it did to the humblest worker and the highest emperor, alive, beautiful, and profoundly, peacefully dark. The city has gone quiet, the fires outside have dimmed, and across the world, from the marble walls of Rome to the mud-brick homes of Egypt, the deep hours of night have begun. This is the time when even the air feels different, cooler, slower, a little heavier, as though the world itself has settled into rest. If you listen closely, you can still hear the faint crackle of a dying flame, the last oil in a lamp, the last ember in the hearth. A soft sound, almost like breathing. Inside the homes of the ancient world, the night was not empty. It was full of life, small, quiet, careful life. In a Roman insula, a tall apartment building of clay and wood, a mother sits awake beside her children. The room is narrow. The ceiling beams are low, darkened by years of smoke. A single oil lamp burns on the floor, its flame steady but low, the oil nearly gone. She's wrapped in a thin wool shawl. Her sons sleep beside her on a woven mat, their faces turned toward the wall. Outside, she can hear the occasional creak of another family moving above, someone shifting in sleep, or a clay jug being set down. The lamp sputters once. She leans forward, breathes gently across the wick, and steadies it with the edge of a spoon. Her eyes linger on the light. It's the same light she saw the night before, and the night before that, always small, always alive. She doesn't think of it as luxury, it's simply part of the night's rhythm. In another room, on another floor, a man wakes to drink from a clay cup. The water is cool and faintly metallic. He doesn't bother to relight his lamp. The starlight through the window is enough. For a moment, he listens. The sounds of the night are layered like threads. The wind brushing the roof tiles, the rustle of mice near the grain jar, a distant voice, soft and half-dreaming, murmuring from another apartment. Nothing loud, nothing sharp, only the breathing of a city at rest. He lies back down, pulling a thin blanket over himself, and stares at the dark ceiling. The flame of a neighbor's lamp flickers faintly through a crack in the wall. The light dances across his face once, twice, and then disappears as the neighbor lowers it to sleep. In wealthier homes, the night is no brighter, only quieter, more deliberate. In a domus near the Palatine Hill, a noblewoman sits awake in her courtyard chamber. Her servants have long since gone to their quarters. The air smells faintly of olive oil and pressed flowers. She keeps a lamp beside her couch, bronze, shaped like a bird with outstretched wings. The flame glows through the small opening of its beak. On the table before her lies a wax tablet and a stylus. She traces slow lines into it, not words, just patterns. The rhythmic scratching soothes her, fills the silence like a heartbeat. Outside, the garden is pale under the moonlight. The fountain barely moves. Somewhere beyond the wall, a night bird calls. The sound drifts through the open archway, soft as breath, and fades into stillness again. She closes her eyes and leans back. The flame paints warm color across her eyelids. Sleep finds her not as escape, but as surrender. Elsewhere, in the countryside beyond the city, darkness is even deeper. A farmer's cottage stands alone among olive trees. No lamps, no streetlights, no neighbors for miles. Only starlight and the faint glow of a hearth. The family sleeps together on straw mattresses near the fire. The last log cracks and shifts, sending a small cloud of sparks upward. The father turns in his sleep, murmuring something. A dream, perhaps a name. The mother's hand, resting across her child's chest, moves gently as if to calm him, though he's already still. Outside, the sounds are endless. Crickets, the sigh of the wind through dry leaves, and from far off, the bark of a dog that no one sees. Here, night doesn't end. It simply drifts from one breath to another. For most of human history, this was the true heart of night, a time not of action but of being. People didn't expect to sleep straight through until morning. They dozed, woke, listened, thought, and slept again. It was natural, the body's rhythm following the quiet of the world. If someone woke in the dark, they didn't call it insomnia. They might whisper a prayer, adjust the fire, check on a child. The night belonged to them gently without hurry. And always there was the flame, whether in a palace or a peasant's hut. That soft orange light tied everyone to the same truth, the fragility of night and the care it demanded. In Egypt, small lamps burned before household gods, figures carved from limestone or painted on the wall. Their light cast shifting shapes across the room, as if the gods themselves breathed. In Greece, the flame of Hestia was never allowed to die, even when everyone slept. It was the soul of the house, the heart that never stopped beating. Imagine it, 100,000 homes across the ancient world, each with its own single flame, each watched over by someone who stirs once in the night to keep it alive. The glow of those lamps never met one another, but together, they stitched the darkness of the world with tiny threads of light, a constellation of humanity mirroring the stars above. In that fragile, beautiful balance between flame and shadow, between sleep and waking, people lived their nights not as something to pass through, but as something to share. It wasn't a time to fear. It was a time to feel, to listen to one's breath, to hold warmth close, to remember the simplicity of light in darkness. And when the first faint gray of dawn began to stretch across the walls, the lamps would be lowered one by one, the wicks pinched between damp fingers, and the last curl of smoke would rise like a sigh, carrying the night away. The old empires are gone. The marble cities are dust. And for the first time in centuries, the world feels truly dark again. When Rome fell, its lamps fell with it. The glass, the bronze, the steady supply of oil, all vanished into memory. What remained were candles, fires, and the slow return of shadows. In this new age, night no longer meant peace. It meant mystery and sometimes fear. Across medieval Europe, when the sun dipped beyond the hills, people hurried. Fields were cleared. Doors were bolted. Animals were herded close to the home. The light of day was precious, and the dark beyond it, unpredictable. The forest was never far, and in those woods, deep, unbroken, endless, night began long before sunset. Branches tangled into blackness. Owls called. Wolves hunted. To most, that sound was enough to quicken the heart. Few people ventured out after dusk unless they had no choice. Roads were dangerous, uneven, unmarked. Even the moon's light could turn a path into confusion. So they stayed inside, near fire, near others, near safety. Inside a small thatched cottage, smoke curls from the hearth into the rafters. A single candle burns in a shallow dish, tallow, rough, uneven. The smell is sharp and animal, the light low and trembling. A woman mends cloth near the flame. Her husband sits by the door, sharpening a sickle, though his eyes droop with sleep. Their children are already curled in a pile of blankets and straw, breathing softly. Outside, the cold presses against the walls. Wind finds every gap between the stones. The thatch above shifts with the air, sighing like a living thing. The woman stops her sewing, glances at the window. It's only a square of blackness, nothing to see, but still, she looks. A habit, as if to check that the night hasn't crept in. The church bells ring faintly from far away. 8 strikes. It's time for the curfew, the couvre-feu. That word, born from Old French, means cover the fire. When it rang, every household was expected to lower their flames, douse their lamps, and settle in. Fire was both comfort and danger. One stray spark could devour a whole wooden village by morning. So families covered their embers with ash, leaving them to sleep until dawn. The world, once lit by the hearth, faded to gray, then to black, and stillness followed. For the first time in history, night became the realm of stories. When people could no longer see, they began to imagine. They spoke of spirits wandering the lanes, of ghostly processions, of witches flying to secret gatherings, of demons whispering through cracks in the walls. Each region had its own tales. In England, the black dog was said to walk the moors, silent, shaggy, eyes like coals. In France, people feared the Ankou, the pale figure who drove a cart collecting souls. And in Germany, travelers whispered of Die Wild Jagd, the wild hunt, riders sweeping through the sky with hounds and horns, chasing the lost. Most didn't believe, but few dared to test the night. The darkness itself was proof enough. Yet the same night that frightened also healed. For peasants who worked from sunrise to sunset, it was the only time the world rested. Fields slept under frost, rivers stilled, tools cooled by the hearth. In that pause, there was comfort, a shared quiet among thousands of unseen homes. A mother whispered to her child. A man mended a net by candlelight. A distant church bell echoed across the valley, marking another hour safely past. It was peace born not of plenty, but of exhaustion. And in that peace, faith grew strong. Churches and monasteries were among the few places that stayed awake through the night. Their stone walls glowed with candlelight long after villages went dark. From inside, chants rose softly, Latin words echoing in cold air. People believed those prayers kept the darkness itself away. The monks became guardians of both soul and night. While others slept, they moved through cloisters with oil lamps, the light falling across carvings of saints and beasts, the sound of sandals on stone mixing with the drip of water from ancient roofs. The rhythm of their hours, matins, lauds, vespers, divided the night into sacred time. To them, each hour was a step through shadow toward light. Outside those walls, the common people measured the night differently. They read it by sound, by the distance between one owl's cry and the next, by the way a dog's bark echoed, by how long a candle burned before guttering. The world moved by instinct, not by clock, but by feeling. When the fire died too quickly, it meant damp wood or bad luck. When the rooster crowed too early, someone would fall ill. The night was a map written in signs, and everyone knew how to read it. Some nights were calm, others felt strange, charged, waiting, alive. When the wind blew from the east, it carried whispers. When fog rose from the fields, people said the souls of the dead were walking. But even in those moments of unease, life went on. Bread rose by the fire, a dog shifted by the door. Someone stirred the coals to keep them from dying. And little by little, the fear softened, replaced by the familiar pulse of warmth, of sleep, of time. By midnight, nearly every candle is out. The ashes in the hearth glow faintly red. The air is cool and smells of wood and wool. In 1,000 villages across Europe, silence reigns. Only the wind moves, and the slow creak of beams in the roof. The world has shrunk again, from empires to hamlets, from lamps to embers, from certainty to faith. But in that shrinking, something beautiful has returned, the intimacy of darkness. Before electricity, before gaslight, before even candles could be spared, the people of the Middle Ages lived close to the night. They feared it, yes, but they also depended on it. It was their boundary and their shelter. It hid what they couldn't bear to face, and softened what they couldn't afford to lose. Darkness was no longer a mystery to solve. It was a presence to live beside. And in that quiet, black world, humanity relearned something it had forgotten since the days of Rome. That night, left untouched, is not an enemy. Simply the world resting. The village has gone dark. The last hearths are covered. But somewhere beyond the valley, a bell tolls. Its sound carries softly across the sleeping fields, low, even, unhurried. It is not meant to wake the world, only those whose lives belong to prayer. Inside the walls of a stone monastery, the bell's echo fades into the cold, and one by one the brothers rise. They do not speak. They do not rush. Bare feet touch the cold floor. Woolen robes are drawn close against the air. Hands find candles waiting by the bedside. Short, thick, handmade from beeswax and patience. Each flame is lit from another. Each small fire passed on like a blessing. The light moves slowly down the hallways, multiplying and softening the dark. Shadows ripple across the stone walls, breathing with the rhythm of the flames. It is time for matins, the first office of the night. The word means morning, though dawn is still hours away. To the monks, this is the hour of watchfulness, when the body is tired, but the soul is most alert. The chapel is cold, its air damp with the scent of limestone and wax. The brothers enter in silence, carrying their candles before them. Each one bows at the threshold, the sound of fabric rustling like leaves in winter. The lamps on the altar burn steadily, fed by olive oil brought from far lands. The flames are small but enough. The walls shimmer faintly, gold against gray. A deep voice begins the chant. Domini, labia mea aperis, Lord, open my lips. And the others answer, Etios meum annunciabit laudem tuum, and my mouth will proclaim your praise. The sound rises, slow and low, winding through the air like smoke. It fills the arches, the rafters, the hollow spaces of the night. There are no instruments, no rhythm, no rush. Only the human voice, pure, even ancient. This is what the night looked like in the monasteries of Europe. Rows of men in dark robes, their faces half lit by candlelight, their voices weaving into one endless tone. Outside, the world sleeps. Inside, prayer continues. To them, this was not strange. It was duty, the keeping of divine order. When others rested, the monks carried the world's silence for them. The hours move quietly. The chanting gives way to reading psalms, sermons, verses copied by hand. A monk sits near a single lamp, its flame bending with each draft. He holds a piece of vellum steady with one hand and writes with the other. The ink is thick and smells of iron and vinegar. His letters are slow, curved, patient. Each one will last longer than he will. He pauses often to wipe his quill. Then he leans back, closes his eyes, and listens to the sound of breathing around him. He can hear the faint creak of benches, the flutter of robes, the soft cough of someone who has caught a chill. It's all part of the rhythm of living inside the dark. After matins comes lauds, the praise before dawn. It is still night, but the faintest promise of morning touches the edges of the sky. A second bell sounds, thinner and higher, echoing across cloisters slick with dew. The monks stand again. Candles are relit. The same steps repeat, the same words, the same stillness. To the world outside, nothing changes. To the monks, everything does. This hour between black and gray is sacred. They believe it is when heaven listens most closely. Through open arches, the air drifts cold and pure. Somewhere, a raven stirs on the roof beams. The first note of dawn birdsong trembles, brief and uncertain. It is not yet light, but it will be. The monks chant on. Each word leaves a breath of steam in the air. Each voice rises and fades, blending into the next. The music is not meant to be heard, it is meant to exist. When the prayers end, there is no applause, no conversation. They bow again, one by one, and leave the chapel. The candles are snuffed. The room falls back into its natural darkness. Only the faint trace of smoke remains, sweet, dry, faintly floral from the beeswax. Outside, the horizon is turning pale. A thin blue line marks the beginning of another day. The brothers walk in silence through the cloister. Their shadows fall long across the flagstones, then vanish as they turn a corner. Soon they will eat bread, water, a bit of cheese, then work until the next bell calls. But for now, there is a brief stillness, the breath between prayer and dawn. For centuries, this was how nights passed in monasteries across Europe. From Cluny to Canterbury, from the Alps to Ireland, the same rituals, the same words, the same candlelight on stone. The rest of the world slept, dreamed, or feared. But here, in these quiet halls, night was not danger or rest. It was devotion. The monks kept the rhythm of the stars. They were time itself, walking through shadow, carrying the steady glow of faith from one age into the next. Outside the monastery walls, the world is beginning to wake. Farmers, villagers, bakers. But inside, the last lamp is being covered, the last prayer whispered, the last sound fading. And for one perfect moment, Before day and night exchange their light, the silence feels complete, weightless, endless, like the still breath of the world, held between one heartbeat and the next. The monastery bells fade behind the hills. Their echo lingers in the air like a breath that never ends. And down below, in the folds of the land, the village begins to glow. It isn't bright, not even close. The light comes from windows, from door cracks, from the soft red of hearth fires. Each home holds its own small circle of warmth, floating in the wide dark like an ember in ash. This is the medieval village at night, quiet, patient, alive. A dirt path runs through its center, worn by carts and bare feet. By day, it's full of noise. The call of traders, the creak of wagons, the laughter of children. But now, as the last colors leave the sky, the path turns empty, soft, and still. You can hear the creak of doors closing, the snap of kindling in hearths, the lowing of cattle settling in their stalls. Above, the thatched roofs catch the faint glow of the moon, silver threads in a sea of black. A few stars peek through where the smoke thins, and from somewhere near the stream a frog croaks, once, then again, then not at all. Inside one of the cottages, the fire has been coaxed to life again. The hearth sits in the middle of the room. No chimney, just a hole in the roof where the smoke drifts out in a slow, steady ribbon. The air is thick with warmth, wood, and wool. A woman kneels beside the fire, turning a small iron pot of stew. The scent fills the room: barley, onions, a bit of salt pork. Beside her, her husband mends a wooden handle with a knife that's seen too many winters. The candle on the table is made of tallow, rough, uneven, its flame a trembling star. Its light doesn't fill the room. It brushes it. Everything feels soft at the edges. Two children sit near the wall, tracing patterns in the dirt with sticks. The older one hums a tune his mother used to sing during harvest. The younger leans against him, half asleep, eyes catching the flicker of the fire. Outside, the wind moves through the trees, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke from every home in the valley. Together, those fires make a village glow, faint, warm, human. This is not a world of stillness alone. There is laughter, too. Across the lane, a group of neighbors share a jug of ale. Their voices rise and fall, not loud, just enough to break the quiet. One tells a story, something about a fox that stole from the miller's bin. Another adds a joke. The laughter spreads easily. Even the dogs outside lift their heads, tails thumping once against the earth before settling again. For a few short hours after sunset, the darkness belongs to companionship. People talk, share, mend, sing. The day's labor fades into small comforts. Then, gradually, the voices thin. The ale runs out. The laughter fades into yawns and goodnights. One by one, doors are barred, fires lowered, candles snuffed. The village folds inward. Only the faint red glow of coals remains, like sleeping eyes in the night. But the world outside those doors is not entirely still. A baker in a small hut near the edge of the square begins his work early. He piles wood into a clay oven, coaxing a thin flame that will feed the entire village by dawn. The smell of burning oak drifts slowly through the streets, mixing with the cool scent of dew. Farther away, a shepherd tends his flock. He stands by the fence, watching the outlines of sheep move like clouds in the moonlight. He holds a small lantern, a simple frame of horn and iron, its glow the color of honey. The sheep stir softly, reassured by his presence. He hums, a low, steady sound, carried away by the wind. Not far from him, near the well, a woman steps out from her home with a wooden bucket. She moves carefully, her bare feet finding the packed earth by memory. The stars are so bright she hardly needs her lantern. She lowers the bucket, listens to it hit the water with a soft thunk. When she pulls it up, the rope creaks. The sound seems impossibly loud in the silence. For a moment, she looks up at the sky. It's heavy with constellations, the same ones her grandmother knew and her grandmother's grandmother. In those stars, she sees nothing mystical, only company. She smiles faintly, turns, and walks back toward her door. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks twice, then goes quiet. The village exhales again. The rhythm of night settles in slow, calm, complete. This was life for most people in the Middle Ages. The night wasn't an empty gap between days. It was its own kind of day, filled with small work, small warmth, small joys. Taught patience, taught trust. It reminded people of their size in the great breathing world. Not small in fear, but small in belonging. In the great cities, candles burned in courts and cathedrals. But here, in these little pockets of earth and wood, night remained close and familiar. It wasn't something to escape. It was something to share with family, with animals, with the unseen rhythm of stars and seasons. By the time the first light of dawn touches the rooftops, smoke already drifts from a dozen chimneys. The baker's oven glows, the rooster calls, and the world begins its slow return to noise. But for a few precious hours, while most still slept, the village lived in perfect quiet, perfectly together. Its heart, gentle and glowing, beating softly in the dark. There was a time not very long ago when no one expected to sleep through the night. Before the invention of artificial light, sleep came in two parts. It was called first sleep and second sleep, a rhythm as natural as breathing, as ancient as fire. Every person, from peasants to kings, shared this secret rhythm. The body followed the dark, and the dark followed the body. In villages across Europe, families would go to bed not long after sunset. The first hours of rest were deep, the kind that wrapped you in silence and dream. The fire would burn low, the air cool, and the world would vanish behind heavy eyelids. But around midnight, always around midnight, something strange would happen. People woke, not startled, not panicked, just awake. It was expected, ordinary, natural. A farmer might rise and throw another log on the fire. A mother might feed her baby or whisper a prayer. A father might check the animals in the shed, his path lit by a small tallow candle. They didn't call it insomnia. They called it the watch or the waking. And for 1 or 2 quiet hours in the middle of the night, the world belonged entirely to them. Imagine it, a cottage under the moon. The fire glows softly again, lighting the faces of those half awake. No one rushes. No one speaks loudly. The sound of stirring embers, a slow sigh, the faint creak of the wooden beams overhead. These are the only things that move. Outside, the night is thick and beautiful. The stars look close enough to touch. A breeze drifts through the window, cold, clean, and full of the smell of earth. Inside, a woman leans over her sleeping children, tucking the blankets higher. Her husband sits at the fire, warming his hands. For a few moments, their eyes meet in the flickering light, not in conversation, but in recognition. It is their hour, the one between. During these in-between hours, people did many things. Some prayed. Monks weren't the only ones who believed the midnight hour was sacred. The church called it the vigil, the time when heaven was closest to earth. People whispered psalms or repeated familiar words, half by habit, half by comfort. Others used the time more simply. They spoke with one another, the kind of quiet talk that only happens when the rest of the world is asleep. They planned the next day's work. They shared stories, laughter, secrets. Some couples made love during these hours. Believing conception came easiest under moonlight. It was the world's private intermission. Pause not of rest, but of peace. Writers noticed it too. In the 15th century, an English physician wrote that people naturally woke after the first sleep and stayed awake for 1 or 2 hours. Court records, diaries, even letters mention it casually, as if everyone knew. In one, a man wrote to his friend, "I have risen from my first sleep and find the house so still that I can hear the snow fall." In another, "After my first sleep, I prayed for an hour and returned to bed in good spirits." No one questioned it. No one tried to fix it. They simply lived by the night's design. As the hours passed, the fire would dim again. The talk would fade. Someone would stretch, yawn, and say softly, "It's time for the second." Blankets rustled. The world fell back into silence. And the second sleep began, longer, heavier, dream-filled, carried people straight into dawn. When they woke, they felt complete, as though the night had been two breaths, not one. This rhythm wasn't rare. It existed everywhere, in England, France, Italy, even as far as China. It lasted for thousands of years. It was how humanity truly slept. Only with the arrival of light, first gas, then electricity, did we forget. When nights became shorter, when candles and lamps kept us awake longer, the two sleeps merged into one. The watch, that secret middle hour, disappeared. But something remains. You can feel it even now. That strange moment when you wake in the middle of the night and feel calm. Not afraid. When the world feels softer, the air cooler, and the silence more alive than sound. That's the echo of an older rhythm, your body remembering what it once knew. In those lost hours, our ancestors met the night halfway. They didn't fight it, they trusted it. Half of their dreams came before, half came after, and in between was the quietest peace humanity has ever known. A time of whispers, warmth, and steady breathing. A time when night belonged entirely to us. The countryside sleeps. The fields are black and endless. The village is dark. But on a distant hill, light still burns. It spills from narrow windows, golden against the stone. A castle alive after sundown. While peasants rest and the monks pray, this world keeps its own rhythm. The night here is not for fear or silence. It is for company, for laughter, for display. Yet even in all its luxury, it still belongs to the same darkness. The torches may shimmer, but the shadows are never far. Inside, the air smells of wood smoke and beeswax. The great hall glows with the shimmer of 100 small flames. Torches fixed in iron sconces, candles melting slowly on long oak tables. At the center sits the lord of the castle, heavy robe draped across his shoulders. His family and guests dine with him. The meal is slow, deliberate, a ceremony of sound and scent. The clink of knives on pewter plates, the low murmur of voices beneath vaulted ceilings, the occasional bark of laughter that echoes too loudly, then fades again. Servants move quietly between benches, pouring wine, carrying trenchers of bread and roasted meat. Their eyes stay down, their pace measured. For them, this is not celebration. It's duty. A minstrel plays a slow tune on a lute near the hearth. The melody twists gently through the smoke. No one listens closely, but everyone hears it, a sound to fill the space between sentences. Outside the tall windows, the wind presses against the glassless openings. You can see it moving the torch flames, making the shadows bend and tremble. Beyond the walls, the night stretches into emptiness. No villages, no lamps, no stars near enough to warm. Only the deep hum of winter air, cold and vast. But here, in this fragile island of light, warmth blooms. When the feast ends, the great candles are pinched out one by one. The hall falls dim, the smell of wax thickens, and the smoke curls upward like pale ghosts. The noble guests rise and bow. Some head to the chambers above, long corridors where footsteps echo. Others linger by the fire, drinking quietly, their faces half-shadowed, half-glowing. The servants begin to clear the tables. Plates stacked, crumbs brushed into baskets, benches pushed aside. The scrape of wood on stone fills the silence where laughter used to be. It is the same sound heard every night in castles across Europe. From England to France, from Spain to Hungary, the slow winding down of luxury into stillness. Upstairs, the private chambers wait. The air smells faintly of lavender and rosewater. Perfume scattered to mask the closeness of the room. Tapestries hang on the walls, thick enough to hold warmth and muffle sound. In the corner, a fire burns low in a stone hearth. Its light dances across gilt-framed mirrors and silver basins. A lady sits at her dressing table. Her maid combs her hair, pulling the brush through with slow, patient strokes. Each one catches the light and lets it go again. Behind her, her husband paces, half listening to the faint music still echoing below. He stops at the window, narrow, cold, facing the stars. He can see the village lights far off, like faint red dots on the land. He thinks briefly about how quiet it must be down there. Then he turns back to the room. Every sound in the castle has its place. The creak of floorboards, the hiss of logs shifting in the fire, the whisper of silk against stone. From the servants' hall comes a muffled clatter. Cups being washed, boots being dried, whispers exchanged. These are the final movements of the day. Small, unseen, but essential. In one corner chamber, a servant girl tends to the lamps. She trims the wicks, pours new oil, and wipes the soot from their rims. Her hands are quick and practiced. The job must be done before dawn. She doesn't speak. No one does. But as she moves, she hums a little tune, one she learned from her mother, who lit these same lamps years before. The sound is soft, almost lost in the crackle of the fire. It fills the emptiness with something like memory. Later, when all are asleep, the castle changes again. The grand halls fall dark, and the corridors narrow with shadow. Only the guards remain, men walking with torches, their metal boots striking slow rhythms on the flagstones. They pass doorways draped in curtains, hear the faint breathing of those within, and feel the chill of stone seep through their gloves. Every hour, one stops and strikes the floor with the butt of his spear, a sound like a heartbeat, reminding the walls that someone still wakes. Outside, the wind howls through arrow slits and battlements, carries with it the smell of pine and rain. And from the stables below, a horse stamps once, shakes its mane, then settles again. In the highest tower, a single room stays lit. A scholar, the castle scribe, sits beside his desk. He writes by candlelight, his quill scratching over parchment. He dips the pen, lifts it, and blows gently on the ink to dry it. On the page, he writes about the harvest, the stars, the king's decree, nothing unusual. But for a moment, he stops and looks out the window. Below him, the castle sleeps, layers of shadow and breath and slow-burning fires. Beyond it, the valley lies in perfect darkness. He can see the faint line of the river, shining silver under the moon. He thinks about how small the light of his candle must look from there, just one trembling point against the black. He smiles. Then he dips the quill again and keeps writing. Hours pass. The candles shrink. The flames bow lower. And slowly, the castle's heartbeat fades into stillness. The servants sleep. The nobles dream. The guards fight drowsiness with slow pacing and whispered prayers. Outside, the stars burn without end. Inside, humanity dreams beneath stone. This was the noble night, the night of wealth, of ritual, of endless watching. The poor slept when darkness came. The monks prayed through it. But the rich, they stretched the night to its edges, trying to keep the day alive a little longer, as if light could be held by will alone. And yet, when the candles guttered and the last flame died, their world, too, surrendered to the same ancient dark. The same silence, the same breath, the same peace. The dark is not as deep as it once was. The centuries of silence are ending. The world is learning how to shine again. It begins quietly, with a lantern swinging on an iron hook, a doorway lit, a street corner no longer completely black. This is the Renaissance night, not yet bright, not yet restless, but alive. In the cities of Florence, Paris, and London, life no longer ends when the sun sets. Merchants keep their shops open longer. Artisans talk by candlelight, their hands still busy even after dusk. The sound of hammers, presses, footsteps. It all continues. You can smell it. Warm bread cooling in the baker's window, wax melting in chandlers' shops, the faint sweetness of fruit carts being packed for morning. The city breathes after dark now, and for the first time in centuries, people are not afraid of the night. Lanterns appear, a new kind of light. In Florence, they hang them along bridges, each one a small fire trapped behind panels of horn or oiled parchment. The glow is soft and golden, casting ovals of light across the cobblestones. In London, men called watchmen patrol the streets, carrying long poles with iron lanterns hooked to the ends. The glass inside is smoky, but it works. They call out the hours. 10 o'clock and all's well. Their voices echoing between narrow wooden houses. The sound drifts like comfort through the night air. The watchmen aren't alone. There are printers still awake, their presses thudding slowly in back rooms. There are innkeepers sweeping steps, serving the last ale to travelers from the countryside. There are candle makers working by the faint light of their own creations, the smell of tallow thick and familiar. The city after dark is a web of these quiet motions, small, repetitive, tender acts of persistence. At the same time, something new is appearing, a kind of curiosity, a hunger for company after sundown. People begin to gather in taverns and inns, low wooden buildings glowing from within. Laughter, card games, and music spill through their shutters. Someone plays a viol or a pipe. A fire roars in the corner. Ale froths and sloshes in mugs. Outside, a few lanterns hang above the door, and moths dance endlessly in their light. For centuries, the night had been a wall. Now it was becoming a room shared, warm, human. In Paris, the change is even more dramatic. By the early 1600s, the city introduces a law. Every house must hang a lantern outside at night to keep the streets visible for passers-by and patrols. Imagine it. Hundreds of tiny flames suspended above the cobblestones, each one flickering against the dark facades. For the first time, people could walk safely after dusk, their shadows gliding beside them, their steps no longer swallowed by total black. The city looks alive, its windows glowing like constellations of earth. Writers begin to notice. They write of nights filled with color and sound, of lovers meeting on bridges, of musicians playing in courtyards, of scholars sitting awake at their desks, reading by candlelight until the ink blurs. Artists paint night itself now, capturing the yellow glow of oil lamps on silk and glass. The darkness becomes beautiful again, not an enemy, but a subject. In one narrow street in Venice, a candle maker locks his door and begins his walk home. His shoes scuff against the stones. A gondola drifts silently through the nearby canal, its lantern reflected in the water like a floating moon. He passes a bakery, and the smell of rising dough fills the air. The baker is working through the night, preparing for dawn. He nods through the open window, and the baker nods back without a word. The city feels alive, but still gentle, like a dream in motion. Further north, in a London alley, a woman in a plain cloak carries a small candle inside a glass hand lantern. The wind threatens it, so she shields it with her hand. The flame glows across her face, soft, alive, human. She's returning from a friend's home, where they've shared a simple supper and laughter that lasted longer than planned. It's late now, but she doesn't hurry. The night feels safe enough to walk through. She pauses at a corner, listens to the faint call of the watchman, then moves on, her light swaying with her steps. In the quietest hour before dawn, the city holds its breath. The tavern's close, the press is still. The lanterns tremble on their hooks, their oil almost gone. The wind picks up. It smells of rain, of ash, of bread soon to rise. A dog trots down an alley. A cart rattles in the distance. And somewhere, in an upper window, a poet still writes by candlelight, his page half covered in words and wax stains. He pauses, listens to the silence, and smiles to himself. This, he thinks, is what night was meant to be, not feared, not hidden from, but lived. By dawn, the city has changed again. The lanterns go out. Smoke lifts from the chimneys. The first wagons creak through the gates, bringing milk, wood, and letters. The people rise, unaware that they've just lived through something remarkable, a night that didn't belong to darkness alone. For the first time in history, humanity has learned how to share the night, to fill it with warmth, with work, with music, with light. Midnight has passed. The great houses have gone dark. The lords and ladies sleep behind curtains of velvet and lace. The halls that shimmered with light a few hours ago now lie in deep shadow. But the night isn't over. Not for everyone. Down below, in the stone corridors beneath the stairs, small lamps still burn. Their light is dim, yellow, unsteady, but it's enough to see by. This is the hour of the servants, the unseen heartbeat of the house. In a kitchen the size of a chapel, the air is heavy with smoke and bread. A single lamp swings from a hook above the hearth. Its flame moves when the door opens, a quiet breath of air, and then the light steadies again. A young maid kneels beside the fire, stacking wood for the morning. Her hands are red from scrubbing pots, her sleeves damp. She hums softly, a tune she doesn't remember learning, keeps the silence company. Behind her, the cook measures flour into a bowl. Slowly, carefully, the way she's done for 30 years. She doesn't look tired anymore. There's a calm that comes when the rest of the world is sleeping. Upstairs, the clock ticks once, then twice. The echo drifts through the stairwell. The air smells faintly of candle wax and linen, the scent of a house breathing in its sleep. In the laundry room, another servant irons a sheet, the heavy metal pressed against fabric warmed by coals. Each motion is slow, even careful. She doesn't speak. Only the iron moves, whispering against cloth. In the hallway outside the main chamber, a boy walks with a candle cupped in his hand. He checks each door, gently turning the latch to make sure it's locked. His shadow moves with him, long and thin across the walls. When he reaches the last door, he pauses. The master's hound lifts its head, then rests it again. The boy nods to the dog like an old friend. He has one job left, to bank the fires. He kneels at the great hearth, pulls the ash forward, and buries the coals under it. A soft hiss, a faint curl of smoke, and the glow fades into rest. When he stands, the room is almost dark. The portraits on the walls seem to watch him. But he's not afraid. He's done this every night of his life. Elsewhere, in a narrow attic room, the butler writes in a small book a list of provisions used that day and what must be ordered next. His candle burns low, wax running down in tiny rivers. He writes slowly, the letters careful, almost beautiful. When he finishes, he closes the book, waits for the ink to dry, and leans back in his chair with a sigh. Outside the window, the courtyard is silver with frost. The moonlight glints on the cobblestones. He can see his own reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, steady hands. He's grown old with this house. He pinches the candlewick to save the last bit of wax for morning. The room falls into perfect darkness. In another corner of the house, a scullery maid carries a tray of dishes to the pantry. The plates clink softly, echoing off the stone. She moves barefoot, quicker that way, quieter. She's thinking about her family, miles away. Her brother will be up soon to milk the cows. Her mother will be stirring the fire. She imagines their morning as she finishes the last of her night. When she sets the final plate down, she stops and looks at the flame in her lantern. For a long moment, she just watches it. Feels like company, the only thing in the world still awake with her. Far above her, in the master's room, the lady stirs. Her dream shifts. She doesn't wake, but she moves her hand across the silk sheets, searching for warmth. Downstairs, the maid sets the kettle by the fire for morning tea. The two moments happen together, quietly connected by the same house, the same air, the same fragile thread of light. As the first hint of gray creeps through the shutters, the servants begin to finish their work. The kitchen fire is rekindled. The tables are wiped. Fresh water is carried upstairs for washing. One by one, they retreat to their rooms, tiny quarters tucked beneath staircases and beams. No one will see them sleep. By the time the masters rise, they will already be moving again. The world will think the day simply began. For centuries, nights like this filled every manor, palace, and estate in Europe. Thousands of hands working in silence, lighting candles, folding linens, mending, cleaning, preparing for a dawn they would never get to greet. The upper world slept in luxury. The lower one kept it alive. And in those quiet hours, when only the servants and the stars were awake, the two worlds, rich and poor, above and below, shared the same stillness, the same breath, the same fragile peace of the night. Beyond the edges of every city, beyond the glow of every hearth, There was another world, the countryside at night. To live there was to live with darkness itself. Not against it, not above it. With it. The last cottage sits at the edge of a meadow. Its roof is low, its chimney leaning slightly, its single window faintly lit. Inside, the fire has just been covered. A woman places a wooden lid over the pot and whispers a small prayer before bed. Outside, the air feels endless. The ground glistens with frost. The sky is a sheet of silver stars. More than most eyes today will ever see. The only sound is the wind moving through the grass, and the slow creak of the cottage door settling in its hinges. The countryside night is not silent. It breathes. Listen closely. An owl calls from the forest edge. A stream murmurs between stones. A sheep shifts in its pen, bleating softly in sleep. Every sound is distant, but none are alone. Together, they weave a rhythm older than human history, a pattern of quiet life carried through centuries. In the Highlands of Scotland, shepherds keep watch over their flocks through the dark hours. Their cloaks are heavy, their fires small, but the stars above are bright enough to read by. A man turns his face upward and sees the familiar constellations: Orion's belt, the Pleiades, the cold white arc of the Milky Way. Each one burns like an ember above him. He knows their patterns by heart. When one rises, he knows the time. When another fades, he knows the season. The stars are his clock, his calendar, his comfort. In the valleys below, farmers sleep lightly. Their homes are small, built of mud and timber. No glass in the windows, only wooden shutters. Sometimes, in the deepest part of night, they wake, to check on a sick cow, to pull a child closer, to listen for the sound of rain. The darkness in these places is thick, not empty but alive. To step outside is to disappear into it. Even the moon seems distant, its light scattered by mist and the breath of the earth. In the forests of Germany, travelers tie their horses and make fires of birch and pine. The wood pops and cracks, throwing sparks into the air that vanish before they touch the branches above. The men sit close, their faces half-lit, their voices low and careful. No one speaks of spirits here, but everyone feels them. The dark between the trees seems deeper than the dark of the sky. Eyes glimmer from the underbrush. Deer, fox, perhaps something else. The world out here is still wild. Even a small fire feels like defiance. In the far north, in villages that see snow for months, the night lasts longer, not hours, but seasons. The people there live by glow. They hang lamps filled with fish oil, their light blue and soft, their smell sharp. When storms roll through, the lamps sway, casting shadows that dance across the walls like spirits passing. Children fall asleep to the sound of the wind in the roof, a deep, endless hum that fills every dream. Their parents sit beside the hearth, sewing, carving, humming softly, their movements slow and certain. Outside, the snow glows faintly, the earth itself holding a kind of quiet light. All across the countryside, night shapes life in its own way. People rise and rest with it. Animals move by its cues. Even the crops, in their frozen fields, glimmer faintly under the frost, as if the moon itself is keeping watch. To live here is to understand how fragile light is. A single candle can change a room. A single ember can warm a family. And when the fire dies, the dark doesn't threaten, it simply returns. For thousands of years, this was what night meant to most of humanity. The rhythm of the wind, the cry of an animal far off, the endless presence of the stars. It wasn't something to conquer or fear. It was part of the world, a space between work and waking, between earth and sky. And if you stood there, in that stillness, with only your breath and the cold air for company, you might feel something few people feel today, that the night is not empty at all, but full of life, full of time, full of memory. By the time dawn touches the hills, the fires are only embers. The animals stir, and the mist begins to rise from the fields. The first light doesn't chase the dark away. It just softens it, folding it gently back into the land. The countryside exhales, and the old rhythm begins again. The world has changed. The stars are still above, but fewer people can see them now. The air that once smelled of pine and earth now smells of smoke and metal. The wind that once carried the cry of owls now carries the hiss of steam. Night has not vanished, but it no longer belongs to darkness. In the heart of London, the lamps burn long after sunset. Rows of iron posts line the streets, each topped with a glass globe glowing faintly yellow. They run on gas, a miracle pulled from coal, channeled through pipes beneath the ground. It hisses quietly at the base of every lamp, feeding the flames that never sleep. For the first time, a city glows like the stars it once hid. Shadows stretch softer, faces stay visible, and time itself seems to stretch. The gaslight hums gently, like a living thing. It flickers when the wind passes, but never truly dies. People walk later now, couples under umbrellas, vendors pushing carts, policemen pacing with batons clicking on stone. Windows shimmer with reflection, gold light trembling on wet cobblestones, smoke curling like ghosts between boots and wheels. This is the new rhythm of the night. But not far away, another light burns, harsher, hungrier. Factories. In the great cities of England and France, chimneys pierce the clouds, and the glow from their furnaces turns the horizon red. The night no longer ends work, it extends it. Men and women file through gates, their breath white in the cold, their faces lit orange from within. Inside, machines roar, gears spinning, belts snapping, iron clanging in rhythm. The sound is constant, hypnotic, like a storm that never ends. Each motion timed by steam, each worker timed by clock. The candlelight of the past has become a furnace. In a weaving mill near Manchester, a girl no older than 12 stands beside a loom. The air is hot, thick with dust. The gas lamps overhead hiss and tremble. She hums quietly, a tune she learned from her mother, something to keep her hands moving. When the overseer passes, she lowers her eyes, then keeps working thread, shuttle, thread. Her fingers move faster than the flame flickers. Outside, snow falls, unseen. Inside, the air never changes. She will not see the moon tonight. Across the channel in Paris, the boulevards shine with a different kind of light. The gas lamps line every avenue, their glow reflected in glass and rain. The cafes are still open, their doors spilling warmth and chatter onto the streets. Writers, artists, philosophers, they sit awake long into the night, their tables scattered with ink, coffee, and cigarette ash. One of them looks up, squints at the lamp outside, and writes, "We have stolen the night from the heavens." He's not wrong. For centuries, night was a pause, a breath, a silence, a rest. Now it becomes motion again. The hum of cities never stops. The wheels never cool. Ships are loaded under lanterns at the docks. Trains steam through the dark, their lamps cutting tunnels of light through the fog. In the houses nearby, windows glow later each year. People read longer, write longer, live longer in hours borrowed from darkness. But not everyone welcomes it. Some writers warn that gaslight is unnatural, that it keeps the body awake when it wants to sleep. Doctors worry about workers collapsing. Their days stretch thin until the body forgets the rhythm of the sun. And in quieter homes, old people still light candles instead of lamps, saying softly that the flame of oil feels more human. It flickers when you breathe near it, and goes out when you tell it to. The new lights don't listen. In the countryside, miles away, the world still sleeps as it always has. But when the sky glows faintly to the north, not with dawn, but with the reflection of cities, farmers look up and wonder if morning has come early. It hasn't. It's only the light of men, rising to meet the stars. Inside a lamplighter's workshop, rows of glass globes hang on wooden racks. He polishes them one by one, his hands black with soot, his breath fogging the glass. When dawn comes, he will walk the streets again, extinguishing each flame with a long metal pole. The hiss of gas fading, the smoke curling upward like tiny spirits leaving. By evening, he will return and relight them all. His life, two halves of the same flame. The people of this new world no longer fear the dark. But they no longer rest in it, either. The night that once healed now hums with movement. Its silence is filled with footsteps, engines, and the whisper of 1,000 lives refusing to sleep. Still, if you listen, under the sound of trains, beneath the breath of smoke, you can hear something familiar, the steady rhythm of time, the pulse of light and dark taking turns. The same pattern that's always been. It's just louder now. By morning, the lamps go out, the smoke drifts away, and the city yawns. The streets glisten from the night's rain. The smell of coal fades, replaced by bread and coffee. But the memory of the light remains. How it shimmered through fog, how it made the world new again, how it changed the shape of sleep forever. The darkness of the world is growing thinner. The fires have been tamed, the smoke has cleared, and a new kind of light is waiting, invisible, silent, endless. No wick, no flame, no breath, just power. It begins quietly in a laboratory. A glass bulb, a thin filament, a flicker, and then a glow. No smoke, no soot, no trembling air. A light that doesn't die when you sleep, that doesn't need tending, that doesn't care if you breathe. For the first time in history, the world holds light that is not alive. When Thomas Edison perfects his incandescent bulb in 1879, people come to see it the way they once came to see fire. Crowds gather outside his laboratory in Menlo Park, watching rows of bulbs strung along fences and porches. They glow steady, silent, as if the stars have descended to earth and taken root. Some cheer, some stare in awe, some feel something colder, as if the night itself is being rewritten. Within a decade, cities follow. In Paris, they call it La Ville Lumière, the city of light. The grand boulevards shine brighter than the moon, their electric lamps strung in perfect rows, each one humming softly with unseen current. The Seine glitters, the bridges glow, and people stroll long after midnight, their faces silvered by the new light of the age. They laugh, unaware that for the first time in thousands of years, true darkness has vanished from their lives. In New York, the transformation is faster, louder. The electric arc lamps crackle above Broadway, their white glare sharp enough to turn night into noon. Children stand in the street with hands shielding their eyes, laughing and squinting at the brightness. Old lamplighters look up at the poles that now carry wires instead of flames, and know their time is ending. One of them removes his cap, stares at the new lights, and mutters softly, "They don't even flicker." Electricity moves through the world like a tide. Factories run all night now, no longer bound by oil or gas. Homes stay lit. Shops glow through the hours once meant for sleep. People begin to forget what it felt like to walk through a true black street, to see the stars unchallenged, to feel a room slowly fade into dark. The new light is everywhere, and it never goes out. For the first time in human history, night stops being a boundary. It becomes a continuation. The workers keep working. The readers keep reading. The thinkers, the dreamers, the sleepless, they all find a kind of endless morning stretching before them. But with that endless morning comes a quiet change. The rhythm that once ruled every life, the pulse of day and night, rest and waking, begins to blur. The world learns how to shine, but forgets how to stop. In a small apartment in London, a woman sits by her window, her room lit by a single electric bulb hanging from the ceiling. It doesn't hiss or flicker or smell of oil. It just burns, silent and constant. She misses the candlelight, the way it danced when she spoke, the way it dimmed when she grew tired, the way it seemed to listen. The new light feels indifferent, beautiful but indifferent. Still, she keeps it on. The safer, cleaner, brighter. Her book glows beneath it like a page of sunlight. Outside, the street is white with brightness. She can see every brick, every shadow, and somehow that makes her feel even more alone. In the countryside, people notice something strange. The stars look fainter now. The Milky Way no longer splits the sky. Even from miles away, A faint orange glow sits on the horizon, the reflection of cities that never truly sleep. Children born under this new light will grow up never knowing what real night looks like. The world has turned on its own sun, and it will not set again. Yet there is beauty in it still. In the glow of a single bulb above a writer's desk, a new kind of dream takes shape. In hospitals, electric light saves lives. In homes, it ends the fear of shadows. In streets, it brings safety and a new kind of community. The gift of light, once fragile and flickering, has become eternal. But like all gifts, it comes with memory, a quiet echo of the dark it replaced. Now, if you were to stand on a hill above the city at night, you'd see it glowing like a sea of constellations. Each window, each lamp, each filament. A human star burning against the void. It's beautiful. It's endless. It's what we built to remind ourselves we were never meant to be in darkness. And yet, somewhere far away, in the mountains, the deserts, the deep forests, the old night still waits, silent, patient, untouched. The age of darkness has ended. The age of light has begun. But as you look at the glowing world below, you might feel the smallest wish that just for one night, everything could go dark again, and you could see the stars the way our ancestors did. The world no longer sleeps as it once did. Cities glow all night long, and the stars, the oldest companions of humankind, hide behind a curtain of light. But somewhere beneath that brightness, beneath the hum of machines and the pulse of electric veins, something old is still waiting, something that remembers, night itself. In mountain cabins far from towns, people still turn off every lamp and let the dark return. At first, it feels unfamiliar, like meeting an old friend you've forgotten how to speak to. The blackness fills every corner. The eyes adjust, the air deepens, and slowly, the silence begins to hum again. It isn't empty, it's alive. The same rhythm that moved through Roman alleys, through candlelit monasteries, through sleeping villages and starlit fields, is still here, just quieter now. We thought we lost it when the lights came, but the truth is night was never gone. It was only waiting for us to look away from the glow. In small observatories, astronomers stand at the edge of the world's remaining darkness. They wait for clouds to part, for electric lights to fade behind distant hills. When the sky clears, they breathe in. The Milky Way returns, a river of fire above them, the same one our ancestors looked upon when fire was new. Some of them cry, not from sadness, but from remembering. In quiet forests, people have begun to walk again by starlight. Their eyes, long dulled by bulbs and screens, learn once more how to see in shadow. They notice the glow of moss, the shimmer of dew on leaves, the faint path of their own breath in the cool air. The night, they realize, was never the enemy. It was the pause between every heartbeat of the world. Science now tells us what the old rhythms always knew, that darkness heals, that the body needs it, that the absence of light allows us to dream deeply, to grow, to repair what the day takes. In hospitals, researchers speak of circadian rhythm, the natural clock within every living thing, how it follows the turning of the earth, how it listens to the language of shadow and dawn. It is the same rhythm that guided monks through prayer, farmers through harvest, and shepherds through their lonely watches. We did not invent it. We only forgot. Now slowly the world is learning again. Cities dim their lights to let the stars through once more. National parks protect the night sky as something sacred. Photographers travel to deserts and mountains just to see true black again. And people, lying in their beds, turn off their phones, close their eyes, and remember how to be still. The dark, once feared, feels gentle again. If you step outside, somewhere far from the city, you'll notice how vast the sky really is. The stars move with the same patience they always have. The air hums with crickets and the slow breathing of trees. The moon glows softly on water, on rooftops, on sleeping faces. Every light humanity ever made, every torch, every lamp, every bulb, was born from this one, the cold, perfect light of the moon. We didn't invent light, we borrowed it. And now, as the world hums quietly beneath its blanket of brightness, there are still hours when darkness wins. When the power flickers, when the lamps go out, when the clouds cover the city. For a moment, everything stops. And in that pause, in that deep quiet, you can almost hear the world exhale, the sound of its own memory returning. So if you're still awake, let the silence take you now. Close your eyes. Let the hum fade. Let the night, the real night, find you again. No kings, no candles, no wires. Just the quiet breath of the world turning, and the soft rhythm of time continuing without hurry. This is what night looked like before electricity. And it still exists. In you, around you, waiting to be remembered.